Hello, my dearest history lovers, and welcome back to Boring Sleepy History. I'm so glad you're joining me again tonight for another gentle journey through time. Settle in, find your coziest blanket, maybe grab a warm drink, something comforting and soothing. Let those eyelids get heavy, let the worries of the day drift away. Where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it in your corner of the world? Is the sun setting, painting the sky in beautiful hues, or are you nestled in the darkness already? I hope wherever you are, you feel safe, warm, and ready to drift away on a wave of history. Imagine, if you will, the swirling sands of Baghdad, a fierce khamsin wind whipping through the narrow streets. The year is 947. You are not me, nestled in my quiet recording studio, but a bookseller within the magnificent House of Wisdom, a bustling hive of intellectual activity. Books piled high, the scent of parchment and ink heavy in the air. The storm rages outside, trapping you and a handful of scholars inside, and as the wind howls, a hushed, remarkable conversation unfolds. A conversation between yourself and a renowned philosopher that will alter the course of your evening, and perhaps, just perhaps, the course of history. Let's dive into it together. The air hung thick and warm, heavy with the scent of aged parchment and dried ink. Dust motes, illuminated by the soft glow of oil lamps, danced in the stillness of the House of Wisdom. My fingers, calloused from years of handling fragile manuscripts, traced the spine of a worn volume, its leather softened by time and countless readings. A quiet contentment settled over me, a familiar comfort in the rhythmic rustle of turning pages. The day's tasks unfolded in their usual, predictable manner, straightening stacks of scrolls, restocking shelves overflowing with knowledge, the quiet murmur of scholarly conversations, a gentle background hum. The House of Wisdom, my sanctuary, throbbed with a quiet energy, a symphony of whispers and the gentle scratching of quills against parchment. But a subtle dissonance began to intrude upon this harmony. A low, guttural rumble, like the growl of a slumbering beast, vibrated through the very floorboards beneath my feet. It wasn't the usual city noise. This was deeper, more ominous. A tremor of unease stirred within me, a faint premonition of something unsettling. At first, it was barely perceptible, easily dismissed as a trick of the ear. But the rumble grew, steadily intensifying, morphing into a persistent, low-frequency hum that resonated in my chest. The air, once still and heavy with the scent of ink, now carried a hint of something else, a gritty, earthy smell, the promise of the desert wind. The whispers in the House of Wisdom gradually subsided, replaced by a growing hush, an unspoken awareness of the approaching storm. I looked up from my work, my eyes drawn to the high, arched windows overlooking the bustling marketplace. The vibrant colors of the day were beginning to fade, the light dimming, as if a giant hand were drawing a curtain across the sky. Anxiety, a familiar companion in these moments of anticipation, began to prickle at the edges of my mind. The gentle hum of contentment was replaced by a sharper, more urgent rhythm of my own heartbeat. I thought of my fellow booksellers, of the scholars absorbed in their studies, all of us sharing this growing unease, this silent acknowledgement of the approaching chaos. The wind, initially a gentle sigh, picked up speed, its invisible fingers tracing patterns on the dust motes. It whipped against the stone walls of the House of Wisdom, a relentless battering ram against our sanctuary. The rumble transformed into a fierce roar, a deafening cacophony that seemed to threaten to tear the building apart. My hands moved instinctively, securing precious manuscripts, tying down loose scrolls, preparing the House of Wisdom for the inevitable onslaught. The peaceful routine of my day dissolved, replaced by a frantic rush of activity as we all, booksellers, scribes, scholars, worked together, a silent army against the impending sandstorm. With each gust of wind, the darkness deepened, swallowing the light of the oil lamps, transforming the House of Wisdom into a dimly lit refuge, a place of shared anxiety, where the only sound was the relentless roar of the storm and the quiet rhythm of our preparations. The weight of the approaching night pressed down on us, a palpable sense of confinement, a silent anticipation.
The first tremor in the air was subtle, a barely perceptible shift in the usual gentle breeze. But even that slight change carried a warning, a low hum that vibrated through the wooden floorboards of the House of Wisdom, settling deep in my chest. The scent of parchment, usually so comforting, now felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the very air itself held its breath. The glow of the oil lamps, usually so warm and inviting, seemed to flicker nervously, casting elongated, dancing shadows that mimicked the growing unease in my heart. The quiet rustle of turning pages, the gentle murmur of voices, the rhythmic scratch of quills against parchment, all the familiar sounds of the House of Wisdom began to fade, swallowed by a rising, insistent wind. Outside, the sky began its rapid transformation. A moment ago, it had been the soft, dusky blue of twilight. Now it was a bruised purple, streaked with angry crimson, as if the heavens themselves were bleeding. The sun, a hazy orange disk, struggled to maintain its dominance against the encroaching darkness, its light dimming as swiftly as a dying ember. Panic, a cold prickle of fear, snaked through me. It wasn't the storm itself that frightened me, not yet, but the silence that accompanied its approach. The usual cacophony of the city, the calls of vendors, the bleating of animals, the laughter and chatter of the populace had vanished. A heavy, oppressive quiet had settled, a blanket of foreboding that stretched from the furthest reaches of the city to the very walls of the House of Wisdom. Instinct took over, pushing aside the burgeoning fear. I joined the others, the scholars and scribes, moving with a shared purpose, a silent understanding of the task before us. We worked swiftly, efficiently, securing the massive wooden windows, boarding up any gaps or crevices that might allow the storm's fury to penetrate our sanctuary. Each heavy thud of wood against frame was a reminder of our vulnerability, of the power of nature to overwhelm even the most magnificent structures. The wind now howled like a wounded beast, rattling the shutters and doors, attempting to pry them loose from their moorings. Dust, fine and abrasive, seeped in under the hastily secured windows, coating everything in a thin layer of gritty brown. The air grew thick, heavy with the promise of the storm's full force. The oil lamps flickered more violently now, casting grotesque, dancing shadows on the worried faces of my fellow scholars. A strange mixture of dread and exhilaration coursed through me. The isolation, the shared confinement, created an odd sense of camaraderie. We were bound together by our vulnerability, by our collective defiance against the encroaching tempest. We were a small island of light and learning, surrounded by a sea of sand and darkness. The storm raged outside, but within those sturdy walls we held on to a fragile hope, a quiet anticipation of the coming night. The quiet contentment I'd known just hours ago was a distant memory, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that kept time with the relentless beat of the storm. I felt a profound sense of isolation, yet I was surrounded by others, a paradox that amplified my feelings of both security and vulnerability. It was a strange, almost unsettling mix, leaving me both calmed and disturbed by the shared experience.
The wind howled like a tormented beast, clawing at the ancient stones of the House of Wisdom. Inside, the darkness was absolute, a thick, suffocating blanket woven from sand and storm. The only sounds were the rhythmic shudder of the building, groaning under the strain, and the ceaseless roar of the wind, a terrifying lullaby. I huddled deeper into the corner, the worn pages of a half-finished manuscript clutched in my hands, a meager comfort against the primal fear that gnawed at me. Then a flicker of movement in the near-total darkness. A silhouette, tall and thin, emerged from the shadows, a scholar like myself, seeking refuge from the storm's fury. He moved with a quiet grace, his steps barely disturbing the oppressive silence. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, a frantic drum against the steady bass of the wind. He settled down a few feet away, his presence a slight but welcome break in the suffocating solitude. We sat in silence for what felt like ages, each of us absorbed by our own private terrors, the shared experience binding us in a fragile camaraderie. The scent of old parchment and dust, usually a comforting aroma, now felt heavy and stale, mirroring the oppressive atmosphere. Finally, he spoke, his voice a low murmur that barely cut through the wind's roar. He said, "Remarkable, isn't it? The way nature can silence even the most learned of men." His tone was not of fear, but of wonder, a calm acceptance of the storm's power. I nodded, finding myself agreeing. It was remarkable, terrifying, awe-inspiring. The relentless assault of the wind, the complete absence of light, the feeling of utter helplessness, all of it a potent reminder of our insignificance in the face of nature's raw power. Yet, In the midst of this fear, there was a strange calm, a sense of shared fate that oddly comforted. He continued, his voice softer still, almost a whisper. He said, "I've been considering the nature of knowledge. How much do we truly know? How much of what we believe is merely illusion?" I found myself drawn into the conversation, the fear momentarily receding as we delved into the age-old questions of existence. We spoke of the fleeting nature of time, of the weight of words, of the fragility of life, and the enduring power of the human spirit to find meaning, even in the face of such overwhelming forces. It was a strange conversation, a profound philosophical debate amidst the primal chaos of a sandstorm, our voices barely audible above the wind's furious symphony. It wasn't a structured discussion. Our thoughts flowed organically, intertwined with the storm's rhythms, a strange dance between fear and philosophical exploration. Each shared thought, each fleeting observation was a small candle flame against the overwhelming darkness, illuminating our shared humanity, our shared vulnerability. There was a comfort in sharing the burden of our fears, in recognizing the similar depths of our questions, a mutual respect that quietly bloomed in the heart of the raging storm. In that shared silence, punctuated by the storm's ferocity, I felt a sense of profound connection with this fellow scholar, a bond forged in the crucible of fear and uncertainty. It was a feeling of belonging, a deep appreciation for shared humanity, finding a common ground amidst the chaos. This temporary sanctuary, this moment of shared experience, was a testament to the resilient power of the human spirit.
The wind howled like a tormented beast, clawing at the very stones of the house of wisdom. Inside, the air hung thick and heavy, the scent of old parchment mingling with the earthy tang of the sand that had infiltrated every crack and crevice. Darkness pressed in on us, a tangible thing, broken only by the flickering glow of our oil lamps. The philosopher, seated across from me, his face etched with the lines of age and thought, stirred slightly. "It's remarkable," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the storm's roar, "how such a small thing, a grain of sand, can, in its multitude, create such a powerful force." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the dancing flame of my lamp. His words resonated deeply, mirroring the thoughts that had been swirling within me. The power of the storm, its relentless assault, felt strangely akin to the vast, unknowable universe of knowledge that surrounded us, contained within these very walls. Books, filled with the wisdom of ages, stood silent witnesses to our confinement, their leather spines worn smooth by countless hands. "Knowledge," I said, my voice a low whisper, "it's like the storm, isn't it? Unpredictable, overwhelming at times, yet capable of breathtaking beauty." He smiled, a faint, almost imperceptible movement. "Indeed, and yet both are finite. The storm will pass,
as will our lives. Our knowledge, our stories, even the mightiest empires crumble to dust. His words, though tinged with melancholy, did not depress me. They held a strange comfort, a shared acceptance of the inevitable. We sat in companionable silence for a while, the only sound the relentless drumming of the wind and the soft crackle of the fire. Then he spoke again, his voice low and thoughtful. "Do you ever consider the nature of time within this storm?" he asked, his gaze drifting towards the shuttered window. How the moments blend and blur one upon the other. How many sandstorms have raged before this one, leaving their mark, and how many will follow? I found myself reflecting on his words. The passage of time, usually so measured by the turning of pages, the setting of the sun, seemed distorted by the relentless rhythm of the wind. It felt both endless and fleeting, a strange paradox. We measure time by our deeds, by our experiences, by the stories we tell and the stories we read. "And what of the meaning of it all?" he asked, his voice soft. "What meaning do we find within this relentless dance of sand and shadow?" I looked at him, truly saw him then in the flickering lamplight, the weariness in his eyes, the wisdom etched into his face. The answer, I realized, wasn't some grand philosophical declaration, but the simple shared humanity we were experiencing in this moment of isolation. The quiet strength we found in our shared silence, our shared anticipation, our shared vulnerability. "Perhaps," I said softly, "the meaning lies not in the grand scheme of things, but in the small connections, in the shared moments, in finding solace in the storm." He smiled, a slow, gentle curve of his lips. The storm raged outside, but within the confines of the house of wisdom, a different kind of peace began to settle over us, as quiet as the fall of a single grain of sand. The wind howled, a relentless beast clawing at the ancient stones of the house of wisdom. The philosopher's words, once a steady stream, had dwindled to a trickle, then to silence. Not an uncomfortable silence, mind you, but a shared one, a quiet acknowledgment of the storm's overwhelming presence. It filled every crevice, every space between us, a palpable entity. The rhythmic thud of sand against the thick walls became a lullaby, punctuated by the occasional groan of the old building, a sigh of protest against the wind's fury. I found myself listening not just to the storm, but to the house itself, to the subtle creaks and whispers of its aged timbers, stories whispered only to those who knew how to listen. The philosopher sat across from me, a silhouette against the flickering lamplight, their face etched with the same thoughtful calm I felt settling within me. We sat in companionable silence, the storm raging a symphony around us. I wasn't afraid anymore, not really. The fear had been replaced with a quiet awe, a sense of being small against the immensity of the elements, yet strangely connected to this other soul. His earlier words echoed in my mind, fragmented phrases like jewels scattered on a dark velvet cloth. Something he'd said about the ephemeral nature of knowledge, the way it shifted and changed like the sands themselves, constantly reshaping our understanding. It resonated now, a profound truth, underscored by the ceaseless shifting and roaring of the storm. I thought of the books surrounding us, silent witnesses to centuries of stories, each one a microcosm of human experience. The stories held within those weathered pages were as vulnerable as we were, as exposed to the whims of fate. Each page a testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and the persistent drive to record and to understand, to leave a trace in the sands of time. The lamplight danced, casting strange shadows on the walls, as if the very building itself were trying to tell a story. I watched the flicker of the flame, its steady defiance against the raging storm outside, mirroring the quiet strength within us, our shared resilience in the face of something much bigger than ourselves. And in that shared silence, a profound understanding bloomed. It wasn't about grand pronouncements or learned debates, but a simple, deep acknowledgement of our shared humanity, our vulnerability, and the surprising comfort to be found in shared, quiet contemplation under a storm. The wind's roar didn't frighten me. It was a backdrop, a powerful, almost sacred soundtrack to our silent conversation. It was a testament to the power of nature and the fragility of our human existence, a profound and simple meditation on the ephemeral nature of all things. The storm, in its furious intensity, had created a space for intimacy, a shared space where the ordinary faded away and the essential remained. Two souls bound together by a shared experience, by the whisper of wisdom amidst the chaos.
The wind howls like a tormented beast, a relentless assault on the ancient stones of the House of Wisdom. Dust, fine as powdered silk, sifted through every crack and crevice, coating everything in a pale, gritty film. Even the silence felt thick, heavy with the storm's relentless presence. Yet within these unforgiving walls, a different kind of quiet had settled between the philosopher and me. A comfortable hush, broken only by the occasional groan of the building and the muffled roar of the wind outside. The philosopher, after a long, thoughtful pause, cleared their throat, a small, almost imperceptible sound in the vastness of the room. "Tell me," they began, their voice a low rumble, calm and measured amidst the tempest. "Have you ever truly tasted the sweetness of a ripe fig plucked fresh from the branch on a summer's day?" I shook my head, lost in the imagery their words conjured. I hadn't, not truly. My life was mostly spent surrounded by the smell of aged parchment, not the sun-drenched sweetness of fruit. "It is a taste," the philosopher continued, a soft smile playing on their lips, "that lingers long after the fruit is gone. The memory of the sun on your skin, the feel of the earth beneath your feet, the hum of bees in the nearby orchard. These are the things that truly matter." and then they began to tell stories. Simple stories, not grand epics of kings and battles, but tales of everyday life, of a childhood spent tending a small garden, the painstaking care required to coax life from the dry earth, of the shared laughter with their siblings, the games they played under the shade of a sprawling olive tree, of the warmth of a fire on a cold winter's night, the comforting glow of oil lamps illuminating the simple pleasures of family. Each story was a tiny window into a life lived fully, a testament to the beauty hidden in the ordinary. The stories weren't elaborate, each was brief, yet intensely evocative. I found myself drawn into them, my anxiety slowly fading as I listened to these quiet, unassuming tales. The weight of the storm, the fear of the unknown, these receded into the background as I lost myself in the beauty of their memories. The philosopher spoke of the simple act of writing, the satisfying scratch of quill on parchment, the slow, methodical process of transforming thoughts into words. They described the joy of sharing stories with friends gathered round a crackling fire, the comfort found in the shared silence between sentences, the warmth of shared humanity. They described the vibrant colors of a bustling marketplace, the cacophony of sounds, the scent of spices and perfumes mingling in the air, and of the feeling of belonging within the chaotic energy of the crowd. They shared memories of traveling across the desert, the vast expanse of sand under a star-filled sky, the silence that allowed for introspection and a deeper understanding of oneself. Listening, I realized that these weren't just memories. They were pieces of a life lived with intention, with an appreciation for the small miracles that unfolded every day. These were fragments of profound experience, delivered with a calm, gentle voice that mirrored the storm's own steady rhythm outside. It was a subtle counterpoint to the turmoil of the elements, a soothing balm for a worried heart. As the philosopher's voice wove its way through the roar of the wind, a feeling of profound connection began to blossom within me. A sense of shared humanity, of common ground discovered in the unlikely setting of a raging sandstorm. The isolation didn't feel so complete anymore. Rather, it felt like a shared crucible, forging a bond between two souls amidst the storm. The wind howled outside, a relentless beast clawing at the ancient stones of the House of Wisdom. But within these walls, a different kind of storm brewed, a gentle tempest of memory and shared experience. The philosopher, their face illuminated by the flickering lamplight, shifted slightly, their posture easing. The intensity of the wind seemed to lessen, at least within the confines of our shared space, becoming a muted percussion to the story unfolding. "I remember," they began, their voice a low murmur, almost lost in the rhythmic sigh of the wind, "a summer evening years ago. The scent of jasmine hung heavy in the air, a sweetness that clung to everything. I was a young boy then, sitting with my grandmother in her garden. She had hands like weathered leather, calloused from years of work in the fields, yet gentle, as she guided mine as we planted tiny seeds, not grand, important crops, but simple herbs, rosemary and thyme. We spoke little, but there was a comfort in the shared silence, the feeling of the cool earth beneath our fingertips. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and gold. It was a simple memory, nothing grand or heroic, but as they spoke, I found myself transported to that garden, inhaling the phantom scent of jasmine, feeling the warmth of the setting sun on my skin, feeling the cool earth beneath my fingers. The pressure of the storm outside became less urgent, less threatening, and the intensity of the shared moment intensified. They continued, their voice weaving a tapestry of everyday moments, a childhood spent playing amongst dusty ruins, the comforting weight of a familiar book in their hands, the quiet joy of sharing a simple meal with loved ones. Each story so ordinary, so seemingly insignificant, yet each radiating a quiet power. It was the power of shared humanity, of simple joys and small victories. The stories weren't just stories. They were the building blocks of a life lived, small moments that, when viewed together, revealed the rich tapestry of existence. There was a deep humanity in these simple stories, a recognition of shared experiences, despite our differences, despite the raging storm that raged on outside. I found myself drawn into their world, sharing the quiet intimacy of their memories, the simple, gentle moments of joy and peace. The storm still raged, but it no longer felt as dominant. It became just a background noise, a constant whisper against the richness and depth of the philosopher's recollections. Their words were like a balm, soothing my own anxieties, reminding me of the quiet beauty that could be found in even the most ordinary lives. The shared silence that followed each memory felt heavy with understanding, a silence rich with the unspoken connection forged between us in the heart of that storm. It wasn't the grand pronouncements or intricate philosophical debates that mattered. It was the shared vulnerability, the quiet trust, and the ability to connect on a deeply human level despite our isolation. The philosopher's tales provided a refuge from the fear, drawing us into a space of peaceful intimacy and common experience. The world outside might be a chaotic whirlwind, but in this small, lamplit space, surrounded by books and stories, we had found a sanctuary.
The wind howled, a relentless beast clawing at the walls of the house of wisdom. Dust, fine as powdered sugar, sifted through the cracks in the boarded windows, coating everything in a thin layer of grit. Yet within this swirling chaos, a different kind of calm had settled between the philosopher and me. The storm raged outside, but inside, a different kind of storm. A tempest of words and memories was brewing. The philosopher, their voice a low murmur against the wind's roar, leaned closer. "It's strange, isn't it?" they said, their gaze drifting to the towering shelves, laden with scrolls and books. I nodded, tracing a finger across the spine of a leather-bound volume nearby. The scent of aged parchment filled my nostrils, a comforting aroma amidst the dust and anxiety. I thought of the countless hands that had touched these books, the countless eyes that had scanned their pages, each reader leaving behind a trace of their experience, their interpretation, their emotions. Each a life lived, each a story untold, until that moment a reader happened upon it. "Your stories," I murmured. "They reminded me of the power held within these very books. The way a simple phrase, a carefully chosen word, can transport you to another time, another place, another life entirely. The power of shared experience. How, in your stories of your past, I see a reflection of my own life's simple truths, hidden within the larger tales of the world around us." The philosopher smiled, a gentle, knowing expression. "Indeed," they replied. "Language is a bridge, isn't it? A bridge across time, a bridge across cultures, a bridge between hearts." It connects us, even in this isolation, even in the face of such overwhelming power as this storm. They gestured towards the raging wind. It reminds me of how human connection can be like a thin thread, something so fine that at any moment the great world around us can break it completely. I thought about that for a moment, about the fragility of life, the fragility of human connection. The storm outside was a powerful force, but the storm of emotions, the shared vulnerability we found ourselves in, was even more intense. We were two souls, isolated, yet united in our shared humanity. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace within myself. The very act of sharing our stories, of listening to the stories of the old books around us, served as an anchor against the swirling chaos. It's as if the stories themselves, the whispered voices from these pages, are reaching out to us, offering comfort, strength, reminding us that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the human spirit can endure, the human heart can find peace. The philosopher nodded slowly, their eyes reflecting the faint, flickering lamplight. And perhaps, they added, their voice barely above a whisper, that is the true power of language, the true power of stories, to connect us, to comfort us, to remind us of our shared humanity, even when the world around us is trying to tear us apart. The wind continued its furious assault on the house of wisdom, but within those sturdy walls, a different kind of storm had subsided. The quiet comfort of shared stories and quiet understandings, the power of connection and peace amidst the overwhelming chaos. In the heart of the storm, we found a kind of peace, an understanding that transcended the fury of the wind and sand. And it was in this shared understanding, this deep understanding forged within shared quiet, that I felt the most profoundly connected to another human being I had ever experienced.
The wind, it seemed, was taking a breath. Not a sudden silence, mind you, but a subtle lessening of the furious assault. The rhythmic pounding against the walls of the house of wisdom softened, the shuddering lessened. It was as if the storm itself was weary, its rage spent for the moment. The change was gradual, almost imperceptible at first, like the slow fading of a harsh light. I noticed it first in the sounds. The relentless roar had retreated to a deeper growl, punctuated by the occasional shriek of the wind as it wrestled against the ancient stones. Then came the small sounds, muted but audible audible, the creak of the building settling, the gentle shift of the sand against the sealed windows. These tiny noises, barely audible moments ago, now stood out with startling clarity. And in the quietening of the storm, something else shifted within the room. The philosopher and I, we had fallen into a comfortable silence, a space shared and understood, not heavy with awkwardness, but rich with unspoken acknowledgement. We sat close, closer than propriety might dictate, but the circumstances had rendered such concerns irrelevant. It was as if the storm had stripped away the usual barriers, leaving us exposed, not in fear, but in a shared vulnerability. I looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time. The lines etched on his face, the weariness in his eyes, these were not signs of weakness, but of a life lived fully,
a mind engaged with the world. His quiet presence radiated a strength that transcended the raging storm outside, a quiet dignity that spoke volumes. He met my gaze, a gentle smile touching his lips. There were no words spoken, no grand pronouncements of friendship or kinship, just a look, a shared understanding that went beyond the spoken word. It was an acknowledgement of our shared humanity, our shared fragility in the face of nature's power, a silent recognition of the preciousness of life. A strange sense of peace settled over me, a calm that deepened with each passing moment as the storm's fury diminished. The anxiety, the fear, they hadn't vanished entirely, but they were no longer the dominant emotions. Instead, a quiet anticipation replaced them, a feeling of hope, mixed with a quiet awe at the storm's power and a profound sense of connection with this man. We sat in silence, listening to the storm's gradual retreat, each breath a testament to our survival, each shared silence a deepening of the understanding that had blossomed between us in the heart of that storm. It was as if the relentless wind had not just purged the outside world of its clamor, but also washed away the barriers between our souls, revealing a quiet strength, a deep understanding, a bond forged in the crucible of the storm. The anticipation of the dawn, of the storm's ending, became something we felt, something we shared, together, in this fragile space we'd carved for ourselves against the wrath of nature. The air, still thick with the scent of dust and damp earth, seemed to carry a new fragrance, the faintest hint of hope, the promise of light breaking through the darkness. The storm might have raged, but it had also revealed something unexpected, something precious within the quiet walls of the House of Wisdom, a connection born of shared vulnerability and a quiet understanding that transcended the chaos of the raging khamsin.
The wind, once a howling beast, now whimpered like a tired child. A faint ethereal light, the color of watered-down honey, began to seep through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. It wasn't the bright, harsh sunlight of midday, but a gentler illumination, a soft caress after a brutal assault. The Sandstorm, our relentless captor, was finally releasing its grip. Silence. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of the storm's peak, but a quieter, more reflective kind. The philosopher and I sat together, a comfortable stillness between us, broken only by the occasional creak of the aging building settling back into its peaceful rhythm. The air, once thick with dust, felt lighter, cleaner. A subtle shift had occurred. The shared fear had given way to a quiet contentment, tinged with the bittersweet knowledge that our unusual companionship was soon to end. Slowly, subtly, the city began to stir. At first, only muffled sounds, the distant bleating of a goat, the faint murmur of voices, a rhythmic thudding that I recognized as the carpenter across the street beginning his day. Then, more clearly, the chirping of sparrows, the distant call to prayer, the gentle clang of a blacksmith's hammer. The world, muffled and distant for hours, was now gently returning to life, its sounds weaving a tapestry of normalcy around us. I looked at the philosopher,
Their face, usually etched with the intensity of intellectual debate, was softened by the events of the night, the lines around their eyes telling a story of shared experience, of quiet reflection. They seemed peaceful, content. There was a calmness in their posture, a gentle smile playing on their lips that spoke volumes. We didn't need words to communicate the shared exhaustion, the mutual gratitude for the shelter, the unspoken understanding that had blossomed within the walls of the House of Wisdom during our forced confinement. The light grew stronger, chasing away the last shadows of the night. Dust motes, illuminated by the growing luminosity, danced in the beams of light that pierced the gloom like tiny celebratory sparks. The lingering smell of sand and damp earth still hung in the air, but beneath it I began to detect the familiar comforting scent of parchment and ink, the smell of home, the smell of routine. The storm had passed, leaving behind a residue of its presence, but also something more significant, a silent testament to our unexpected connection. We sat in that silence for what felt like an eternity, allowing the sounds and scents of the awakening city to gradually envelop us, their gentle intrusions a reminder of the wider world beyond our temporary haven. The philosopher's presence beside me, a silent comfort in the fading light, felt precious, almost sacred. It was as though the walls themselves had conspired to give us this moment, this shared space to process the extraordinary events of the night before we re-entered the ordinary rhythm of our lives. As the final tendrils of darkness retreated, leaving behind a sky painted in hues of soft apricot and rose, we both knew, without needing to speak, that our time together was drawing to a close. The storm had brought us together, but the dawn would soon usher us back to our separate paths, leaving behind a shared memory, a quiet testament to the human capacity for connection even in the face of adversity. A memory born amidst the howling wind and settling sand. The wind, which had howled like a tormented beast only moments ago, now sighed, a weary exhale against the ancient stones of the House of Wisdom. A tremor ran through the building, a final shudder of the storm's fury before surrendering to the rising sun. It was a subtle shift, almost imperceptible at first, like the dimming of a lamp flame before it finally flickers out. But the change was there, undeniable. The pressure on my ears, the relentless drumming against the windows, it eased, softened, receded. Slowly, hesitantly, light began to seep through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, painting faint, watery streaks across the dust-laden floor. It wasn't the bright, harsh sunlight of midday, but a soft, diffused glow, like the first blush of dawn on a winter's morning. The air, thick with the scent of sand and dampness, felt lighter now, less oppressive. The muffled sounds of the storm were replaced by a quiet hum, the city awakening from its enforced slumber. The philosopher sat beside me, his face bathed in this ethereal light. He didn't speak, nor did I. We simply sat, listening to the quiet symphony of the returning city, the distant calls of vendors, the chirping of birds, the creak of settling wood within the House of Wisdom. It was a strange, beautiful sound, this awakening, a counterpoint to the deafening roar that had held us captive. We shared a look, a silent understanding passed between us that transcended words. Then he spoke, his voice low and calm, a gentle ripple in the quietude. He said, "You know, even the fiercest storm cannot extinguish the light. It may obscure it, hide it for a time, but it can never truly destroy it." Paused. He continued, "And humanity, my friend, is much like that light. We may be battered, bruised, even broken by the storms of life, but the spark within us, the capacity for love, for kindness, for understanding, that endures. It may be dimmed, hidden, but it can never be truly extinguished. We may struggle, we may falter, but the light remains." His words hung in the air, simple yet profound, resonating deep within me. It wasn't a grand philosophical treatise, no complex arguments or intricate theories. It was a quiet observation, an understated truth spoken with such gentle conviction that it settled into my heart like a quiet blessing. It was a truth I understood not just intellectually, but viscerally, felt in the very marrow of my bones. The final vestiges of the storm vanished, replaced by the gentle warmth of the rising sun. The city sounds grew clearer, louder, more vibrant. The smell of damp sand mingled with the familiar scent of parchment and ink, a comforting aroma that carried the memory of the shared experience. The weight of the past few hours, the fear, the isolation, the anxiety, it seemed to lift, leaving behind a profound sense of peace. My perspective had shifted, subtly but undeniably. The memory of the philosopher's words, a single flickering light amidst the tempest, would linger, a quiet beacon in the days and nights to come. As the first full rays of the sun poured into the house of wisdom, bathing the room in a warm, golden light, I felt a quiet gratitude, not just for the ending of the storm, but for the unexpected gift of that conversation, for the shared vulnerability, the profound connection forged in the heart of the tempest. The light of human connection, I realized, could indeed endure even the fiercest storms.
The wind, once a ferocious beast clawing at the very stones of the house of wisdom, now sighed, a weary giant slumping to its knees. The sand, which had plastered itself against every surface, began to loosen its grip. A hesitant sliver of sunlight, pale and watery at first, pierced the gloom, pushing its way through the thinning veil of dust. It was a slow unveiling, a gradual awakening. The darkness retreated inch by inch, revealing the familiar shapes of the library, the towering shelves, the worn rugs, the comforting glow of the oil lamps now flickering softly in the returning light. I watched it all, mesmerized, as the philosopher sat beside me, his face illuminated by the growing warmth. The storm had left its mark. A fine dust coated our clothes, and our hair was a tangle of sand. But it was a shared mark, a silent testament to the hours we'd spent together, trapped, yet strangely connected. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was companionable, the kind of quiet that only comes after sharing something profound. It held the weight of unspoken words, the echo of our conversation, the subtle hum of shared experience. He finally spoke, his voice low and measured, like the calming rhythm of the waves retreating from the shore after a tempest. "The storm has passed," he said, a simple statement that carried the weight of worlds. And yet, much remains. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. I wanted to say more, to thank him, to somehow capture the magnitude of our shared night. But words seemed inadequate. The experience was too deeply woven into the fabric of my being to be encapsulated in mere speech. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the city in a warm golden light, I felt a sudden pang of sadness. The storm, our shared confinement, our unexpected fellowship, it was all coming to an end. The moment hung heavy, fragile as the first blossoms of spring. I rose to my feet, and so did he. We stood there for a moment, bathed in the golden light, the silence between us filled with a quiet understanding. There was no grand farewell, no dramatic pronouncements of friendship, just a simple gesture, a shared glance, a slight bow of the head, a quiet nod of acknowledgement. He turned and walked toward the entrance, his silhouette a dark figure against the brilliant sunlight streaming through the newly opened doors. As he disappeared from view, I knew this wasn't just a farewell to a fellow scholar, but a farewell to a part of myself, the part that had been revealed in the heart of the storm. I returned to my books, the scent of parchment and dust filling my nostrils. The city hummed back to life around me, but the silence of the storm and the words shared within it would forever resonate within me. The day unfolded, ordinary yet profoundly altered. The weight of the books in my hands felt different, the words on the pages more vibrant, the stories they held imbued with a newfound depth. The memory of that night, of the philosopher and the storm, would forever be etched into my heart, a quiet reminder of the profound connections forged in the crucible of adversity, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the strength found in shared silence. The heavy wooden door groaned open, revealing a world washed clean. The Sandstorm, a furious beast moments ago, had retreated, leaving behind a city shimmering under the pale gold of the rising sun. The air, still thick with the fine grit of desert dust, held a strange, almost ethereal clarity. It clung to everything, to my clothes, to the books tucked under my arm, even to the very air I breathed. Stepping out into the quiet street, I felt a lightness, a strange sense of renewal. The usual morning bustle was muted, replaced by a hushed expectancy. People moved slowly, their faces etched with the weariness of a night spent huddled against the storm's fury, yet their eyes held a shared understanding, a quiet camaraderie born of shared experience. My feet, still heavy with the weight of the previous night's confinement, carried me towards the familiar rhythm of my daily routine. The House of Wisdom, usually a vibrant hub of activity, was still settling. Bookshelves rearranged slightly, a fine layer of sand dusting every surface.
The scent of parchment, usually a comforting aroma, was now tinged with the sharp, earthy tang of the desert dust. It reminded me of the night, a strange paradox of fear and quiet understanding. I returned to my usual corner, arranging the scattered manuscripts and preparing for the day's customers. My hands, accustomed to the smooth, aged texture of the parchment, felt the subtle roughness of the sand, a constant reminder of the night's intensity. Yet the feeling wasn't unpleasant. It was a texture now woven into the fabric of the memory, a physical manifestation of the shared vulnerability, the whispered conversations and the profound questions pondered during that extraordinary night.
As I worked, my thoughts drifted back to the philosopher. His words, simple yet profound, echoed in the quiet corners of my mind. His stories of ordinary life, told with such gentle grace, had imbued even the mundane tasks of arranging books with a newfound significance. The act of arranging books suddenly felt less like a task and more like a preservation of stories, a participation in the ongoing tapestry of human experience. The quiet contentment I had once felt before the storm was different now. It was deeper, richer, informed by the shared vulnerability and the unexpected connection formed within the confines of the House of Wisdom. It wasn't just the simple joy of my work, but the knowledge that even in the face of overwhelming force, human connection and shared understanding could flourish. The dust motes danced in the sunlight, a reminder of the storm that had passed, yet the quiet wisdom it had brought remained, woven into the fabric of my days to come. The scent of dust and parchment, once just familiar smells, now carried a subtle resonance, the echo of a shared night, a quiet conversation, and a profound connection made amidst the raging heart of a sandstorm. And as I settled into my work, I realized the storm hadn't just reshaped the city, but had subtly yet permanently reshaped me, imbuing my life with a quiet wisdom I hadn't known I was missing.
Even the mundane tasks, like replenishing the oil lamps or sweeping the dust from the floor, took on a new significance. The quiet rhythm of my movements became a meditative practice, a way to quiet my mind and return to the space of calm reflection that the storm and conversation had fostered. The gentle dance of light and shadow in the House of Wisdom now mirrored the dance between light and darkness that the storm had illuminated. As the day progressed and the House of Wisdom filled with scholars and students seeking knowledge, I found myself appreciating the quiet strength of human connection more than ever before. The simple act of sharing space, of sharing knowledge, of sharing quiet moments of reflection. These were not just mundane routines, but powerful threads connecting us all, a quiet tapestry woven together by shared humanity. The storm had passed, but the wisdom it brought with it, the wisdom of shared vulnerability and quiet strength, would remain, a gentle reminder that even in isolation, profound connections can be made. The scent of parchment and the whispers of scholars remained, but now, interwoven with them, were the faint echoes of the philosopher's voice and the quiet contentment that the shared experience had brought. A newfound appreciation for the simple things, the comfort of familiar surroundings, the quiet strength of human connection, the the power of stories, had settled within me like a gentle rain, nourishing my soul and coloring my perception of even the most mundane of tasks. The sandstorm was a memory, a whisper of wind in the now still air. The sun, a benevolent eye in the sky, warmed the dust-coated streets of Baghdad. Life resumed its gentle rhythm, the familiar sounds of the city, the calls of vendors, the clip-clop of horses' hooves, the murmur of conversations, a comforting symphony after the storm's harsh dissonances. I returned to the House of Wisdom, the scent of old parchment and lingering dust, a tangible reminder of the night's extraordinary encounter. The shelves, once seemingly endless in their expanse, now felt strangely intimate. Each book, each scroll, held not only words, but the echoes of the philosopher's voice, his gentle pronouncements on the nature of time, knowledge, and the human spirit. My hands, usually moving with practiced efficiency as I sorted and shelved books, felt different. There was a newfound deliberation, a quiet reverence. The act of dusting a brittle manuscript wasn't just a chore, but a connection to a long chain of scholars and thinkers, each contributing to the vast river of human knowledge. The weight of each volume, previously just a physical sensation, now carried the weight of countless stories, of lives lived, of ideas exchanged. The oil lamps, once simply sources of illumination, now held a deeper significance, their soft glow reflecting in the polished wood of the shelves seemed to symbolize the gentle illumination of the mind, a slow, steady burn of understanding that the philosopher's words had kindled within me. Even the quiet rustle of turning pages held a new resonance, a quiet conversation between past and present, a shared exploration of the infinite. I found myself lingering over certain passages I'd read countless times before, yet they now felt infused with a fresh perspective. The mundane tasks, cataloging new arrivals, repairing damaged texts, cleaning the ancient inkwells, became moments of meditation, each stroke of the quill a deliberate act of preserving and passing on the accumulated wisdom of ages. The philosopher's words resonated in the quiet corners of my mind, his gentle observations illuminating the inherent beauty in the simple act of seeking and sharing knowledge. One afternoon, while meticulously repairing a damaged volume of poetry, I noticed a small, almost invisible inscription on the flyleaf, a single word, barely legible with age, but a word that resonated deeply with the philosopher's sentiment on the enduring power of human connection. It was a single word of hope, written in elegant cursive, a testament to the enduring power of human connection, a subtle echo of the night spent weathering the storm. The scent of parchment and dust, once just the familiar aroma of the House of Wisdom, now carried the weight of shared vulnerability, quiet understanding, and the profound comfort of intellectual companionship in the face of adversity. It was a comforting aroma, a silent testament to a shared night of quiet contemplation, a reminder that even within the confines of a raging sandstorm, the human spirit could find solace, connection, and the quiet beauty of shared wisdom.
The sun, a benevolent hand,
pushed aside the lingering clouds, bathing the house of wisdom in a warm, golden light. Dust motes, like tiny dancing spirits, swirled in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the high arched windows. The air, still thick with the scent of damp earth and drying parchment, held a strange stillness, a quiet aftermath after the storm's furious rage. I knelt amidst stacks of newly arrived scrolls, my fingers tracing the delicate lettering on their spines. Each roll held the weight of centuries, the accumulated wisdom of countless minds. Yet, as I carefully arranged them, my mind weren't on the contents of these ancient texts. My mind wandered back to the philosopher, to his calm voice, his gentle eyes, and the profound words shared during those hours of shared confinement. He had spoken of the fragility of knowledge, how easily it could be lost, how quickly the carefully constructed edifice of human understanding could crumble under the weight of time and circumstance. His words, simple yet weighty, resonated deeply. Here in this very house of wisdom, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of ages, his statement felt both strikingly true and strangely comforting. The storm, in its relentless fury, had threatened to obliterate everything, to sweep away not only the sand, but also the carefully preserved wisdom within these walls. Yet we had survived. We had not only survived, but had found solace and connection in our shared fear, a bond forged in the crucible of the storm's violence. The scrolls in my hands, representing countless hours of painstaking scholarship, felt suddenly more precious, more vulnerable. The very act of preserving knowledge seemed, in that moment, a testament to the enduring human spirit, a defiant act against oblivion. It wasn't just about the texts themselves. It was about the human impulse to create, to understand, to leave a mark on the world, however fleeting. The philosopher's words painted a vivid picture. The vastness of the unknown, the limitations of human understanding, the inevitable passage of time that erodes everything. But interwoven with this awareness was a profound sense of connection, a recognition of our shared humanity in the face of the storm's fury. It was in the sharing of our anxieties, our vulnerabilities, our simple observations about the nature of the world that true wisdom emerged. The scent of the old parchment mingled with the lingering smell of dust and damp earth. The soft rustle of the scrolls in my hands was a counterpoint to the quiet hum of activity in the house of wisdom, a symphony of daily life resuming its rhythm after the storm's passage. But it wasn't merely the sounds and smells that lingered. It was the echo of the philosopher's voice, a gentle reminder that even in the face of overwhelming forces, the human connection, the shared exploration of life's mysteries, remains one of the most powerful and most comforting experiences. As the sun continued its slow ascent, illuminating the house of wisdom, I understood more profoundly than ever before the fragile balance between knowledge and experience, between the written word and the human heart. And I knew with quiet certainty that the lessons learned within the heart of that storm would stay with me long after the dust had finally settled.
The sun, a warm hand, rested on my shoulder as I worked. Dust motes, still dancing in the lingering light of the storm, swirled in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the high-arched windows of the House of Wisdom. The air, thick with the familiar scent of aged parchment and the faint earthy smell of the recent sand, held a quiet peace. Around me, the usual gentle chaos of the library resumed, the soft rustle of turning pages, the occasional cough, the hushed murmur of scholars deep in their studies. But my mind, despite the familiar rhythm of my work, was far from the present. My fingers traced the spine of a worn, leather-bound book, its pages filled with tales of forgotten empires. Yet the stories that truly captivated me were not those of kings and conquerors, but the simpler narratives the philosopher had shared during the storm's relentless assault. His voice, a low rumble against the howling wind, echoed softly in my memory. He'd spoken of childhood games played in sun-drenched courtyards, of the comfort of a familiar hand in the night, of the simple joy of shared meals with loved ones. These were not grand pronouncements of wisdom, but glimpses into the quiet beauty of ordinary existence. It was a stark contrast to the epic narratives that usually filled these ancient walls, yet it held a greater power, a deeper resonance. I recalled the philosopher's description of his grandmother's hands, gnarled and weathered from a life spent tending a small garden, yet capable of crafting the most delicate pastries. The image, so vivid, stirred within me a wave of unexpected emotion. It wasn't the grandeur of her actions that moved me, but the simple act of her dedication, the unspoken love woven into every pastry. The sandstorm, a force of nature so overwhelming, had paradoxically brought us together, stripping away the layers of formality and revealing the shared humanity beneath. In the shared darkness, the shared fear, the shared silence, we'd found a deeper connection than any intellectual debate could have forged. It was in the quiet moments, in the unspoken understanding, that the truest connection had blossomed. As I carefully shelved a newly arrived manuscript, my thoughts returned to his final observation, a simple reflection on the inherent resilience of the human spirit. It resonated with me now, not as an abstract philosophical concept, but as a tangible truth born from the shared ordeal of the storm. The wind may rage, the sand may bury the world, yet the strength of human connection, the power of memory, these remained. The weight of the books in my hands felt different now, heavier perhaps, imbued with a newfound sense of significance. Each book, each story, represented not just the accumulation of knowledge, but the shared experiences, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and failures of countless lives. These stories, both in the books and in my memory, painted a picture far more vibrant, far more profound than the dry facts could ever convey. The scent of parchment, once simply a familiar comfort, now carried the faint whisper of the philosopher's voice, the lingering echoes of the storm, and the indelible mark of a profound connection forged in the heart of the sand. The sun, a warm hand, rested on my shoulder as I worked. dust motes, still dancing in the lingering light of the storm, swirled in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the high windows of the House of Wisdom. The air, thick with the comforting scent of aged parchment and the faint, earthy smell of the recent sand, held a quiet peace that was both familiar and new. My fingers, calloused from years of handling delicate scrolls, traced the spine of a leather-bound volume, the familiar texture grounding me in the present. Yet my mind was far from the task at hand. It drifted, like a leaf on a slow-moving stream, back to the previous night, to the hushed conversation, the shared vulnerability, the unexpected solace found within the heart of the storm. The philosopher's words, simple yet profound, resonated still. Not grand pronouncements, not sweeping theories, but small, poignant stories of a life lived fully, though quietly. I recalled his tale of tending his small garden outside the city walls, the careful planting, the quiet joy of watching seeds sprout and flowers bloom. The simplicity of it struck me anew, a life lived with intention, with a gentle appreciation for the commonplace. Another memory surfaced, his story of a childhood spent listening to his grandmother's stories, tales passed down through generations, a living chain of memory connecting him to the past. He'd spoken of the weight of those words, the way they had shaped his understanding of the world, his place within it. The storm, he'd said, was a powerful force, but it couldn't diminish the strength of those enduring narratives, those whispered histories passed down from one heart to another. His words resonated deeply with my own life here, surrounded by the countless stories held within these very walls. Each scroll, each book, a vessel containing countless lives, countless moments, memories etched onto parchment, preserved in ink, waiting to be discovered and rediscovered. Each a tiny piece of a larger tapestry, woven together to form a picture of humanity, its triumphs and sorrows, its resilience and fragility. The storm, I realized, had been more than just a physical event. It had been a crucible, forging an unexpected connection, a shared experience that transcended the fear and isolation. It had stripped away the superficial, leaving behind a raw vulnerability that allowed for true connection. In the darkness, huddled together, we had shared not just space, but a quiet understanding of our shared mortality, of the fleeting nature of our time on this earth. And that shared vulnerability, I realized, had allowed me to see not only the wisdom in his words, but also a new depth within myself. The quiet contentment I had felt before the storm was still there, but it now held a newfound richness, a deeper appreciation for the simple act of living, for the quiet moments of connection, for the enduring power of stories passed down from one generation to another, from one heart to another. Just like the seeds that sprout and the flowers that bloom. The scent of parchment and dust, once merely a familiar fragrance of my daily work, now carried the weight of that night's shared experience, a poignant reminder that even in the midst of chaos, in the face of isolation, true and meaningful connection can emerge, shaping us in subtle but profound ways. The quiet wisdom I carried within me was not just the words of a philosopher,
but also a lesson etched in dust and light, a reflection of the human spirit's resilience, its capacity for connection, its enduring search for meaning, even in the heart of a storm.
The sun, a warm hand on my shoulder, streamed through the arched windows of the House of Wisdom. Dust motes, tiny dancers in the golden light, swirled in the air, a lingering reminder of the storm. The familiar scent of parchment, still carrying a faint undercurrent of sand, filled my senses. I resumed my work, my fingers tracing the spines of ancient texts, the quiet rustle of turning pages, a comforting rhythm. My hand brushed against something unexpected, a slim volume, tucked away on a lower shelf, its title obscured by dust. I pulled it free, the leather cover cool and smooth beneath my fingertips. As I wiped away the grime, the title emerged, Observations on the Humble Olive. The book itself felt strangely light, almost weightless in my hand. It wasn't a book I recognized. It must have been misplaced during the storm's chaotic aftermath. As I opened it, a pressed flower, delicate and brittle, fell onto the worn wooden table. A single, perfectly preserved olive leaf. A simple thing, yet it held a quiet power. A sudden, sharp memory pierced through my thoughts. A scene from the philosopher's recollections during the storm. He had spoken, his voice barely a whisper above the wind's roar, of his childhood, of helping his grandmother tend her small olive grove. He had described the scent of the leaves, the feel of the sun-warmed earth, the painstaking care involved in harvesting the olives. The details, at the time, had seemed almost incidental, small moments woven into a larger narrative of life's experiences. Now, holding this forgotten book, the olive leaf a tangible link to that memory, everything shifted. The details were no longer peripheral. They were the heart of the matter. It wasn't just about the philosopher's past. It was about the enduring power of simple things, the unnoticed beauty in everyday life. The olive leaf, pressed between the pages of a forgotten book, became a symbol of that quiet resilience, a testament to the enduring nature of human connection. It was a connection born not of grand gestures or profound pronouncements, but of shared vulnerability, of a simple conversation during a storm. The weight of the sandstorm, the anxieties of isolation, the shared intellectual curiosity, all coalesced in this single, almost insignificant leaf. And it struck me a profound and unexpected understanding that my own life, too, was filled with these seemingly insignificant moments, these quiet details that held more meaning than I had ever realized. The familiar scent of parchment, the comforting rustle of pages, the gentle warmth of the sun, all these elements, once merely a backdrop to my work, now held the same subtle power, the same quiet grace as the philosopher's humble olive leaf. The storm, in its fury, had forced us together, stripped away the superficial, and revealed the essential. It wasn't just a night of shared anxiety. It was a night of unexpected connection, a catalyst for deeper self-understanding, a subtle shift in perspective, triggered by the weight of a simple olive leaf.
The sun, a warm honey gold, streamed through the high arched windows of the House of Wisdom, illuminating dust motes dancing in the lingering stillness of the morning. The storm was a distant memory, only the faintest scent of damp earth remaining to remind me of its ferocity. My fingers, calloused from years of handling parchment, traced the spines of books, restoring order to the shelves after the chaos of the previous night. A familiar sense of quiet contentment settled over me, a soothing balm after the intensity of the shared ordeal. My hand brushed against something unexpected, a small, leather-bound volume tucked away on a lower shelf, almost hidden. I pulled it out, its cover worn smooth with age. The title was indecipherable, faded almost to nothing. Curiosity piqued. I opened it. The pages were brittle, yellowed with time, the script elegant but unfamiliar. I turned a few pages, the paper crackling softly under my touch. And then I saw it. Pressed delicately between two pages, a single dried olive leaf. It was remarkably preserved, the olive's shape still visible, its color a muted green-brown. The leaf held a strange, almost otherworldly stillness. A wave of memory, sharp and vivid, washed over me. It wasn't just the image of the leaf itself, but the accompanying sensation, the feeling of cool, smooth leather against my fingertips, the faint, earthy scent of the olive itself, and a whisper of a story. It was a memory from the night before, a memory seemingly unconnected to the leaf, but somehow intrinsically linked in my mind. I recalled the philosopher, his voice low and calm amidst the roaring wind, speaking of his childhood, of playing in his village under an ancient olive tree, the scent of its leaves and ripe fruit filling the air. He had spoken of a particular olive, larger than the others, its branches heavy with fruit. He had described climbing up into its shade, feeling the rough bark under his small hands, the coolness of the leaves against his skin. He had recounted a quiet moment, one of simple happiness, sitting beneath its branches, holding a small, freshly picked olive in his palm. I remembered the quiet weight of the moment, and now this unexpected leaf brought it back with startling clarity. The connection, before elusive, now felt profound. The leaf wasn't just a pressed botanical specimen, it was a tangible link to the philosopher's memories, a bridge between our shared experience in the House of Wisdom and the quiet beauty of his past. It was a small but significant detail, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the unexpected connections that can be forged even in the heart of a storm. The shared experience of the sandstorm had connected us on a deeper, almost spiritual level. The philosopher's memory wasn't just a tale he recounted, it was a living testament to the beauty and simplicity of moments quietly lived, mirroring the quiet contentment I felt in my daily routine within the House of Wisdom. Holding the small book, I felt a subtle shift within me. The quiet contentment I usually felt was deepened, enriched, infused with a newfound appreciation for the small, seemingly insignificant details that make up a life. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered, not as a reminder of isolation and fear, but as a testament to the unexpected beauty of human connection and the enduring power of shared experiences,
even in the midst of seemingly insurmountable challenges. The pressed olive leaf became a silent testament to this.
The dust motes danced in the sunbeams slanting through the high arched windows of the House of Wisdom. Days after the khamsin had retreated, leaving behind only the faintest scent of grit and the lingering echo of its roar, the quiet rhythm of my life had resumed. The scent of aged parchment, the soft rustle of turning pages, these were my familiar comforts, my quiet sanctuary. I was shelving newly arrived scrolls, my fingers tracing the delicate script on their spines, when I felt it, a slight give, a yielding under my fingertips. I pulled out a book smaller than the others, bound in worn leather, its title faded almost to oblivion. As I opened it, a faint earthy aroma rose, sharper than the usual scent of parchment and ink. Inside, nestled between pages brittle with age, lay a single dried olive leaf, pressed perfectly flat. It was a curious thing to find, a tiny, unexpected treasure hidden within this forgotten volume. I turned the pages, the text a language I did not recognize, yet the leaf held a power beyond words. A strange calm settled upon me. Then it came to me, a flash of memory from my conversations with the philosopher during the storm. He had spoken of his childhood, of a small olive grove near his village, of climbing the gnarled trees to gather the fruit, their tastes like sunshine and earth. He spoke of a specific day, a particularly fierce storm that raged while he was in the grove. He described the fear he felt during the storm, a fear not for himself, but for the fragile olive trees he loved. And now, this leaf. A single, seemingly insignificant object, yet a powerful bridge back to that moment, to that shared experience of vulnerability and resilience in the face of nature's power. It wasn't just a leaf. It was a tangible link to his memories, to his heart, and by extension, to the shared human experience we had lived through together during the storm. The olive leaf was a silent witness, a small testament to the power of shared moments, to the profound connections that can blossom even amidst chaos and isolation. It was a reminder that even the smallest details, the most seemingly insignificant objects, can carry immense weight, resonating with the strength of human memory and the enduring impact of human connection. Holding the leaf gently between my fingers, I felt a profound shift within me. The quiet contentment of my daily life now felt alive with unexpected connections, unexpected moments of profound beauty and significance. The House of Wisdom, with its towering shelves of knowledge, felt more connected, not just to the past, but to the very human heart that beats at the center of every story. The dust motes still danced in the sunbeams, but their dance now felt different, imbued with the lingering wisdom of the storm, the shared silence, and a single, perfectly preserved olive leaf. My routine continued, the quiet rhythm of the House of Wisdom still my constant companion. Yet the quiet had changed. It was richer, deeper, resonating with the profoundness of human connection and the lasting impact of shared experiences. And as I carefully placed the book and its olive leaf back in its place, I knew that the memory of that night, of the raging sandstorm and the calm conversation, would forever shape the quiet contentment
that had always been my sanctuary.
The dust had long settled. The khamsin's fury was a distant memory, replaced by the gentle hum of the House of Wisdom, a quiet symphony of rustling pages and hushed whispers. Days had passed since the storm, yet the memory of the philosopher and our shared confinement lingered like the faint scent of dust clinging to the aged parchment. I was back amongst the familiar stacks, the comforting weight of leather-bound volumes in my hands, the scent of aged paper, a soothing balm to my senses. The routine was a welcome embrace, a gentle return to the life I knew, yet something felt different, a subtle shift, a quiet alteration in my perception of the mundane. It began with a book, not a grand tome, not a celebrated text, but a small, unassuming volume I had somehow overlooked, nestled amongst the shelves. Its cover was worn, its leather softened with time. As I pulled it from its resting place, a single pressed olive leaf slipped from its pages, falling softly onto the worn wooden floor. The olive leaf, brittle and dry, was a tiny artifact, yet it held an unexpected power. As I picked it up, a wave of memory washed over me, not my own, but the philosopher's. I saw it all as if through his eyes, a sun-drenched olive grove, the scent of ripe fruit heavy in the air, the gentle rustle of leaves in a warm breeze. A young man, the philosopher himself, laughing with companions, their hands stained purple from crushing olives. It wasn't a grand, dramatic scene, no battle cries or heroic deeds, just simply joy shared amongst friends under a benevolent sun. The image, vivid and startling in its unexpectedness, resonated deeply. It was a stark contrast to the darkness and claustrophobia of our shared storm experience. It spoke of a quiet, unassuming happiness, a peace that existed outside the confines of the House of Wisdom. The memory faded, but the impact lingered. It was as if the olive leaf held not just a pressed plant, but a captured moment, a fragment of a life lived quietly, intensely, a life interwoven with simple moments of joy and connection. And I understood. The philosopher's wisdom during the storm wasn't just about grand philosophical concepts. It was about recognizing the importance of ordinary life, the richness hidden in everyday experiences. It was a profound lesson tucked within a simple olive leaf. It shifted my perspective, not with a dramatic upheaval, but with a gentle nudge. My work within the House of Wisdom suddenly seemed imbued with a new sense of purpose. Each book, each scroll, each word held not just knowledge, but a potential story, a potential life, a potential connection. The quiet hum of the House of Wisdom, once simply a background noise, now resonated with a newfound depth, a richer tapestry woven with threads of human experience. The olive leaf remained pressed between my fingers, a tiny reminder of a profound shift. The sandstorm had passed, the philosopher had gone, yet the quiet wisdom of that shared experience continued to bloom within me, coloring my daily tasks with a gentle, persistent grace. The scent of parchment was still there, but now intertwined with the memory of olives,
a simple yet powerful symbol of a shared humanity.
The dust had settled. The sun, a hesitant painter, was slowly washing the grime from the city's face. Within the House of Wisdom, a gentle quiet reigned, a stark contrast to the ferocious tempest of the night before. The air, still thick with the scent of damp earth and lingering sand, carried a new fragrance, the familiar, comforting aroma of old parchment and ink. I resumed my work, the familiar routine soothing after the upheaval of the storm. My fingers, tracing the spines of ancient texts, felt the reassuring weight of countless stories held within their fragile pages. My hands reached for a stack awaiting sorting. Books returned to their shelves after the storm's chaotic passage. A small volume, thinner than the others, slipped from the pile and fell to the floor with a soft thud. As I picked it up, a faint impression caught my eye, a single, pressed olive leaf tucked neatly between the pages. The leaf, dry and brittle, held a surprising depth of color, a muted green reminiscent of the olive groves I had only ever read about. Intrigued, I opened the book. The script was unfamiliar, a dialect I hadn't encountered before. Yet, as I scanned the elegantly formed characters, a peculiar sensation washed over me, a feeling of recognition, of knowing these words, though I couldn't understand them. It was a feeling of intimacy, a connection that transcended language itself. Suddenly, a vivid image flashed before my eyes, not of the text before me, but of the philosopher, his face etched with lines that spoke of a life lived fully. He was not in our refuge during the storm, but in a sun-drenched courtyard, surrounded by laughter and the aroma of roasting meat. I saw him as a young man, vibrant and full of life. He was not the quiet scholar of the past night, but a boy, carefree and running through fields. Another image emerged. This time he was older, his hair streaked with silver, sitting under a sprawling olive tree, a worn book in his lap. The wind rustled the leaves, creating a gentle murmur. A young woman stood beside him, her face obscured by shadows, but the closeness was palpable, a shared love and companionship. The memories came in fragmented flashes, fleeting moments of joy, of loss, of quiet contemplation. The images were not mine, yet they felt intimately mine. I was sharing the philosopher's life, experiencing his past through the subtle clues hidden within the book, through the unexpected presence of that single, dried olive leaf. The olive leaf served as a key, unlocking memories I could not access through language, weaving a thread of connection far deeper than our shared shelter during the storm. It was a testament to the power of unspoken communication, of the stories woven into the fabric of our lives. The storm, the conversation, the leaf, all connected. This single, seemingly insignificant leaf was a reminder that even in the quiet moments, in the spaces between words and events, profound truths reside. As I carefully placed the book back onto the shelf, a sense of quiet understanding settled over me. The philosopher's quiet wisdom, shared during the storm,
resonated anew, enriched by the glimpse into his past. It was not only the power of words, but also the silent narratives woven into the very fabric of our existence that spoke of the shared human experience. The scent of parchment, once simply a comforting aroma, now carried a deeper meaning. It was the scent of memory, of connection, of the extraordinary beauty found within the ordinary. A silent symphony of life's quiet moments. The storm had passed, but the ripple effect of those shared hours, revealed in the most unexpected of ways, lingered, enriching my life in a gentle, profound way.
The sandstorm was a distant memory now, a faint grit clinging to the windowsills and a lingering smell of dust in the air. The House of Wisdom hummed with its usual gentle activity, the quiet rustle of turning pages, the soft scratch of quills on parchment, the hushed murmur of conversation. I was restocking shelves, my fingers tracing the spines of familiar leather-bound volumes, when my hand brushed against something unexpected. A small, unassuming book, tucked away behind a larger tome, its cover worn and faded. I pulled it free, its pages brittle with age. Inside, nestled between two delicate sheets of parchment, lay a single pressed olive leaf, its color muted by time, yet still retaining a surprising depth of green. Something about it resonated with a quiet familiarity, a faint echo of the storm-bound night. As I held the leaf, its delicate texture surprisingly firm beneath my fingertips, a wave of memories washed over me, memories not my own, but those of the philosopher. It wasn't a sudden, vivid vision, but a slow unfolding, like a tapestry revealed stitch by stitch. I saw him not as the composed scholar of our shared night, but as a younger man, his face etched with sun and wind, walking through a grove of olive trees, the scent of ripe olives heavy in the air. The sun warmed his skin, the breeze rustled through his hair. He was not alone. A young woman, her laughter light as the wind, walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They were sharing an olive, its taste both sweet and bitter on their tongues, its juice staining their chins. The scene shimmered with a simple, quiet joy, a happiness that felt both intimately personal and universally relatable. I saw them again, years later, in a small, sun-drenched courtyard. The woman, older now, her face lined with time, sat beside him, their hands intertwined. She was reading to him from a worn manuscript, her voice soft and melodic, the gentle rhythm of her words filling the quiet space. The olive leaf in my hand seemed to pulse with the warmth of this shared moment. The image shifted once more. This time he was alone, sitting beneath the same olive tree, the woman's absence a palpable ache in the scene. He held a single ripe olive, the same kind as the one pressed within the book. He closed his eyes, and a single tear traced a path through the dust on his weathered cheek. The scene was imbued with a quiet sadness, yet it held a profound sense of peace, a resignation born of acceptance, not defeat. The image faded, leaving me with a profound sense of understanding.
The philosopher's words during the storm, his reflections on life, knowledge, and the passage of time, were not merely abstract concepts, but echoes of these very experiences. The olive leaf was a tangible link to his personal journey, a quiet testament to the complex tapestry of human life. It was a reminder that even the most profound philosophical discussions are rooted in lived experiences, in moments of joy, sorrow, and connection. It made me appreciate the shared vulnerability of our storm-bound night all the more deeply. The unspoken understanding that blossomed between two souls, bound together by the howling wind and the shared weight of human experience. As I placed the book back on the shelf, the olive leaf still resting within its fragile pages, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't just the quiet contentment I usually felt in the House of Wisdom. It was something deeper, something richer, something touched by the shared secrets of a quiet heart revealed through a simple, forgotten book. The days following the storm settled into a familiar rhythm. The House of Wisdom hummed with its usual quiet energy, the scent of old parchment, the gentle creak of turning pages, the hushed whispers of scholars deep in thought, all returned. Yet something felt different, a subtle shift in perspective, a quiet hum of understanding that lingered in the air, much like the faintest trace of dust still clinging to the windowsills. One afternoon, while restocking shelves, my fingers brushed against a worn, leather-bound volume, tucked away on a high shelf, almost hidden from sight. It was unlabeled, its cover faded and cracked with age. I pulled it down, its weight surprisingly light in my hands. As I opened it, a faint, earthy scent drifted upward, a scent I recognized instantly, though I couldn't quite place it. Then, nestled between the brittle pages, I saw it. A single, perfectly preserved olive leaf, pressed flat and impossibly green, as if captured there by some ancient magic. The leaf held a peculiar stillness, a sense of time suspended. It wasn't just a leaf, it was a memory waiting to be unearthed. The image sparked something within me, a sudden vivid recollection of the philosopher's words during the storm. He'd spoken of simple things, of childhood summers spent in a sun-drenched olive grove, of the taste of ripe olives under a clear sky, of the comforting shade of ancient trees. And now here was this leaf, a tangible link to those forgotten moments. It wasn't just a detail, it was a key. It unlocked a flood of previously unseen memories from his past, memories he'd only hinted at during our shared ordeal within the House of Wisdom. I saw him now, not as the esteemed philosopher, but as a boy, his laughter echoing through the ancient trees, his small hands picking ripe olives, his face warm with the sun's embrace. I felt a deeper sense of connection than I had before, a connection that extended beyond the storm, beyond the shared anxieties, and into the very fabric of his life's simple joys. The book itself contained nothing of particular importance, only a collection of mundane notes, drafts of unfinished essays, and personal reflections, all written in a hurried hand. But those notes, those sketches, those scribbled observations, they were now infused with a new significance, illuminated by the presence of that single, seemingly insignificant olive leaf. They weren't just words on parchment. They were glimpses into a life lived simply, richly, authentically. They were the building blocks of his wisdom, quietly formed amidst the everyday.
The scent of aged parchment, usually a comfort, held a faint undertone of dust today. The sandstorm, though a distant memory, still clung to the air, a whisper in the quiet of the House of Wisdom. My fingers, tracing the spines of leather-bound volumes, felt the lingering grit. It was a tangible reminder, a physical echo of that night of shared confinement. I paused, my hand hovering over a particular volume, its title obscured by years of accumulated dust. As I brushed away the grime, a small pressed olive leaf fell from within its pages, a single fragile leaf preserved for centuries. It was insignificant, yet strangely powerful. The same gentle breeze that carried the sand likely once carried this olive leaf, settling it so gently into the place of rest it discovered here, within this forgotten book. And then it struck me. The memory flooded back with startling clarity. The philosopher, during our whispered conversations, had spoken of his childhood, of olive groves, of the simple act of collecting fallen leaves on crisp autumn days, a fleeting memory woven into the tapestry of his life, a detail I'd almost forgotten. But the olive leaf, this tiny dried relic, linked past and present, bridging the gap between a raging sandstorm and the quiet routine of my daily life. It was a quiet moment, profound in its simplicity. The olive leaf was a tiny bridge connecting the momentous intensity of the storm with the gentle hum of ordinary existence. It was a reminder that even within the chaos, beauty and meaning can be found, and that even the smallest details, preserved over time, possesses an extraordinary ability to transport us back to shared moments of human connection. The conversation that night ended with a sense of quiet agreement, an unspoken understanding about the fragility of life, the enduring strength of human connection, and the quiet dignity of both. But it was this small, unexpected find, the pressed olive leaf, that truly sealed the experience. It etched the memory of the storm not as a terrifying ordeal, but as a night of unlikely companionship, a shared vulnerability that blossomed into a quiet understanding, a testament to the power of human connection in the midst of isolation during the most fierce of storms. The faint smell of dust still lingered, a reminder of the storm, but the scent of aged parchment now felt richer, more comforting, holding the gentle, persistent echo of this unlikely encounter under the protective wings of the House of Wisdom. The quiet contentment had returned, deepened now, touched by the quiet wisdom discovered during that unforgettable night. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the night and the leaf and that conversation would forever remain tucked quietly into the heart of my memory, gently whispering of human connection during a storm. Good night, my friends. Sleep well, and until next time, sweet
dreams.